The emergency klaxons blared through Commander Julia Drake's cockpit as her survey vessel, the Pathfinder, spun out of control. The quantum drive had malfunctioned during a routine jump, throwing her ship into an uncharted sector of space. Warning lights flashed across her console as the ship's hull temperature skyrocketed during atmospheric entry. "Computer emergency landing protocols," Julia shouted, fighting with the controls. The ship's AI responded with a series of rapid calculations, but it was too late. The Pathfinder struck something solid, probably a mountain peak, and Julia's world exploded into chaos. When she regained consciousness, the first thing she noticed was the strange, purple light filtering through her cracked view screen. The second was that she was still alive, which seemed impossible given the violence of the crash. Julia ran a quick self-diagnostic through her suit's medical systems. No major injuries, though every muscle in her body screamed in protest as she unbuckled her harness. The ship's external sensors were dead, but her suit systems indicated the atmosphere was breathable if thin. Julia grabbed her emergency pack and plasma rifle, standard issue for deep space explorers, and made her way to the emergency hatch. With a hiss of equalizing pressure, the door opened to reveal an alien landscape that took her breath away. Massive crystalline formations jutted from the ground like the teeth of some ancient beast, each one pulsing with that same strange purple light. The sky above was a deep indigo, crossed by ribbons of luminescent gases that painted the heavens in shades of green and gold. In the distance, she could see what appeared to be structures, too regular to be natural formations. "Definitely not uninhabited," Julia muttered, checking her rifle's charge. Her mission had been simple: survey the edges of known space for potential colony sites. Instead, she'd stumbled upon what appeared to be an alien civilization. The discovery should have been exciting, but something about those distant structures filled her with an inexplicable sense of déjà vu. As Julia made her way toward the structures, her suit's sensors picked up movement. She dropped into a defensive crouch, scanning the terrain. The movement came again, more deliberate this time, and from behind one of the crystal formations emerged a figure that made Julia's heart skip a beat. The alien was humanoid, but clearly not human. Its skin had a metallic sheen, like brushed platinum, and its eyes were large, multifaceted organs that reflected the purple light of the crystals. It wore what appeared to be ceremonial armor, decorated with intricate patterns that seemed to shift and move in the strange light. Julia raised her hands slowly, showing she was no threat despite the rifle slung across her back. The alien's reaction, however, was not what she expected. Instead of fear or aggression, its expression showed something that looked remarkably like recognition. At last, the alien spoke, its voice carrying a musical quality that seemed to resonate with the crystals around them. "The prophecy speaks true. A child of Earth has returned." Julia's training hadn't covered this scenario. "You know what I am." The alien inclined its head in what might have been a nod. "I am Naira, High Sentinel of the Zalaxian people, and you, human, are part of a legacy that has been lost to time." "Lost legacy? I don't understand. Humanity has never encountered your species before." Naira's multifaceted eyes seemed to shimmer with emotion. "That is what your people believe, but the truth is far more complex. Come, there is much you need to see." As Julia followed Naira toward the distant structures, her mind raced with questions. How did these aliens know about humans? What prophecy was Naira talking about? And why did everything about this place feel so hauntingly familiar? The structures grew larger as they approached, revealing themselves to be ancient buildings that combined organic curves with geometric precision. The material looked like a fusion of crystal and metal, and like everything else on this world, they pulsed with that strange purple light. "These are the halls of memory," Naira explained, leading Julia through an archway that seemed to sing as they passed beneath it. "Here we keep the truth of our shared past." The walls within were covered in intricate reliefs, depicting scenes that made Julia's blood run cold. There were humans in those ancient carvings, fighting alongside Zalaxians against a terrible enemy. But that was impossible. Humanity had only achieved interstellar travel 3 centuries ago. "I don't understand," Julia whispered, reaching out to touch one of the reliefs. "How can this exist?" Naira's expression turned grave. "Because 5,000 years ago, humanity and the Zalaxian people were allies in a war that nearly destroyed us all. A war that is about to begin again." As if in response to Naira's words, a distant alarm began to sound, its eerie tone mixing with the natural resonance of the crystal structures. Naira's expression turned from solemn to urgent. "They're coming," she said, her voice tight with fear. "The Nexarians have found us just as the prophecy foretold, and you, Commander Julia Drake, are the key to our survival." The crystalline corridors seemed to whisper ancient secrets as Julia followed Naira deeper into the Xylaxian archive complex. Each step triggered pulses of light that rippled through the walls, as if the very structure recognized her presence. The alien warning systems had fallen silent, but the tension in the air remained palpable. "During my training at the Space Academy, we studied every documented first contact," Julia said, breaking the silence. "Not once was there any mention of the Xylaxians, let alone an ancient alliance." Naira paused before a vast circular chamber, her metallic skin reflecting the ambient purple glow. "What your academies teach is a carefully crafted illusion, Commander Drake. The truth has been sleeping in your DNA, waiting for this moment." The chamber activated at their presence, and Julia felt a strange resonance in her bones. The air itself seemed to crystallize as holographic images materialized around them, showing Earth as it existed 5 millennia ago. But this wasn't the Earth she knew from history books. Massive cities sprawled across continents, their architecture a breathtaking blend of human ingenuity and Xylaxian crystal technology. "This is impossible," Julia whispered, watching as ships bearing both human and Xylaxian markings soared through ancient skies. "Our earliest space flights were barely 3 centuries ago." "Your people's greatest achievement wasn't reaching the stars," Naira said, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the holographic display. "It was making the galaxy forget you had ever been there." The images shifted, showing a new threat emerging from the darkness between stars. Massive organic vessels, more like living nightmares than ships, descended upon peaceful worlds. Julia watched in horror as entire planets were consumed, transformed into twisted versions of themselves. "The Nexarians," Naira explained, her voice hardening. "They emerged from the void between galaxies, bringing with them a hunger that could never be satisfied. Your ancestors stood with us against them when all other species fled or fell." Julia studied the battle scenes playing out before her. Human ships, utilizing tactics that seemed both familiar and alien, fought alongside Xylaxian crystal vessels. "We helped drive them back." "More than that, humanity's unexpected strategies, your species' ability to adapt and innovate in ways the Nexarians couldn't predict, made you their most feared enemy." Naira manipulated the holographic controls, showing the final battles. But victory came at a terrible price. The images showed the aftermath: devastated worlds, shattered fleets, and a desperate plan being put into motion. Julia watched as human leaders gathered in a chamber much like this one, their faces grim with determination. The Nexarians retreated, but they swore to return stronger than before. Your ancestors knew that when they did, they would target Earth first, seeking revenge against their greatest enemy. Naira's voice softened. "So they made an impossible choice." The hologram displayed a massive device, its crystal core pulsing with energy that looked eerily similar to the technology surrounding them now. "They used Xylaxian crystal technology to erase themselves from history," Julia realized. "Not just records, but—" "Everything," Naira confirmed. "They reverted Earth's technology, wiped clean all evidence of the Alliance, and encoded their knowledge and experience into humanity's genetic structure. Your civilization would develop again naturally, hidden from the Nexarian sight, while carrying within it the seeds of its true potential." A distant explosion rocked the chamber, sending cascades of crystalline dust from the ceiling. Julia's hand instinctively went to her weapon. "They're getting closer." "Scout ships," Naira said grimly. "The main fleet approaches. We've tracked their movements through dark space for centuries. They've evolved, grown more powerful. The Xylaxian people maintain the knowledge of our alliance, but we've lost the warrior spirit that once made us strong." She led Julia to another chamber, this one filled with armor and weapons that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. One suit in particular caught Julia's attention. It was clearly designed for human proportions. "Your crash landing was no accident, Julia Drake. The quantum anomaly that brought you here was created by ancient beacons, waiting for a human who carried the right genetic markers. You are the key to awakening what your ancestors left dormant." Julia approached the armor, and it responded to her presence, crystal formations shifting and realigning. When she touched it, memories that weren't her own flooded her mind. Battles fought, strategies conceived, victories won and lost across the stars. "How many?" she asked, her voice steady despite the weight of revelation. "How many Xylexian warriors can still fight?" 300, Naira replied. "But they're ceremonial guards, not soldiers. We've preserved the weapons but forgotten their true purpose." Another explosion, closer this time. Through the crystal walls, Julia could see dark shapes moving against the indigo sky, Nexarian scout ships, testing the Xylexian defenses. Her mind raced with both her own tactical training and these newly awakened memories of ancient warfare. "Then we'll remind them," Julia said, reaching for the armor. "Show me everything you have on Nexarian tactics, their weaknesses. I need to know exactly what these weapons can do." As she spoke, the armor began to reshape itself around her body, ancient technology recognizing its long-lost partner. Through the crystalline walls, more Nexarian ships appeared, their organic hulls writhing against the alien sky. Humanity's forgotten legacy was about to face its greatest test, and Julia Drake stood at the crossroads of two civilizations' destinies. The ancient training grounds of the Xylexians hummed with renewed purpose as Julia stood before 300 warriors, their ceremonial armor now modified for combat. The purple crystal formations surrounding the arena pulsed with energy, responding to the heightened emotions of those gathered. "Your ancestors were warriors," Julia projected her voice across the assembly, the translator in her adapted armor converting her words into the musical Xylexian language. "But they fought with precision, with formation, with honor. Against the Nexarians, that will get you killed." She gestured to the holographic display showing the enemy's biomechanical ships circling the upper atmosphere. "The Nexarians fight like a virus. They adapt, they consume, they evolve. We need to be unpredictable, creative, ruthless when necessary." Naira stood beside her, watching as Julia activated combat simulations using the arena's crystal technology. "Show them," she urged. "Show them how humans fight." Julia nodded and stepped into the simulation. Holographic Nexarian warriors materialized, grotesque combinations of chitinous armor and cybernetic enhancements. The Xylexians watched, fascinated, as Julia demonstrated guerrilla tactics, using terrain for cover, striking from unexpected angles, and most importantly, adapting her strategy mid-fight. "This goes against all our training," one of the Xylexian warriors, Kex, protested. His crystalline armor clinked as he shifted uncomfortably. "We are taught to face our enemies directly to—" A simulation bolt from Julia's weapon caught him off guard, passing harmlessly through his holographic form but making its point. "And now you're dead," Julia stated flatly. "The Nexarians don't care about honor. They care about victory. We need to think like them to beat them." The training continued through the planet's long day. Julia broke the warriors into small squads, teaching them to move like strike teams rather than ceremonial guards. The ancient weapons, a combination of energy weapons and crystalline technology, were powerful but had been used ritualistically for centuries. Julia showed them how to use them as tools of war once again. During a brief rest, Julia stood with Naira atop a crystal spire, watching the warriors below practice their new tactics. "They're learning quickly," she observed. "The warrior spirit never really left them." "No," Naira agreed, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the perpetual twilight. "But something else troubles you. I can sense it." Julia touched the wall of the spire, watching as the crystal responded to her presence. "These memories in my genes, they're becoming stronger. When I touch these crystals, when I use these weapons, I'm remembering things I shouldn't know." Naira placed a hand on Julia's shoulder. "The awakening. Your ancestors embedded more than just dormant knowledge in their descendants. They left experiences." A flash of memory struck Julia. She was standing on this same spire, but 5,000 years ago, watching as the first Nexarian invasion fleet darkened the sky. The memory wasn't hers, but it felt real, visceral. "Commander," Kex's voice snapped her back to the present. "The long-range sensors, they've detected something." Julia and Naira rushed to the command center, where crystalline displays showed a massive disturbance in space. The Nexarian main fleet had arrived sooner than expected. Dozens of massive organic ships, each one a twisted nightmare of biological and mechanical parts, emerged from quantum space. "How long?" Julia demanded. "Hours," Naira replied, her voice tight. "They'll begin planetary invasion within hours." Julia studied the tactical display, her mind racing with both her own training and the ancestral memories surfacing in her consciousness. "We're not ready," she muttered, "but we don't have a choice." She turned to address the gathered warriors. "Everything we've practiced, everything I've shown you, it all happens now. We're outnumbered, outgunned, and they think we're weak. That's our advantage." "How is that an advantage?" Kex asked, his crystalline armor humming with nervous energy. "Because they'll be arrogant," Julia smiled grimly. "They'll expect the same Xylaxians they fought 5,000 years ago. Instead, they're going to face something new, a fusion of human tactical innovation and Xylaxian power." She activated the tactical display, highlighting key points around the city. "We'll place crystal resonators here, here, and here. When their drop ships enter the atmosphere, we'll create a feedback loop that'll disrupt their organic technology. Ground teams will strike from the crystal forests, using the natural formations for cover and amplification of our weapons." The warriors gathered closer, their earlier hesitation replaced with focused attention as Julia outlined her plan. It was unorthodox, combining Xylaxian crystal technology with human guerrilla warfare tactics in ways neither species had considered before. As she spoke, more ancestral memories surfaced, battles fought, strategies used, victories won and lost. But these weren't just memories anymore. They were tools, weapons as powerful as any crystal cannon or energy rifle. The sky above darkened as the first Nexarian ships began their approach. Julia looked at the assembled warriors, seeing not ceremonial guards, but the rebirth of something ancient and powerful. 5,000 years ago, humans and Xylaxians fought as one, she declared. Today, we remind the Nexarians why they feared that alliance. The crystal spires of the city pulsed with power, resonating with the determination of its defenders. The time for training was over. The real test was about to begin. The first Nexarian dropships pierced the atmosphere like falling stars, their organic hulls glowing red with entry heat. Julia watched from the command center as her plan was put into action. The crystal resonators activated, sending invisible waves of energy through the air. The effect was immediate. The Nexarian ships shuddered, their biomechanical systems disrupted by the frequencies that Julia's genetic memories had helped her calculate. "First wave incoming," Kex reported, his voice steady despite the tension. "They're deploying ground forces." Through the crystalline viewing screens, Julia watched as the Nexarian warriors emerged from their ships. They were even more terrifying in person than in the simulations, 3 meters tall, their bodies a horrific fusion of chitinous armor and pulsing cybernetics. But there was intelligence in their movements, a cold calculation that made them truly dangerous. "All teams execute pattern Sigma," Julia commanded. The Xylaxian warriors moved with practiced precision, nothing like their ceremonial formations of days past. They had learned well. The first engagement began in the crystal forests. Nexarian forces pushed forward, expecting to find traditional Xylaxian defensive lines. Instead, they found an empty battlefield. Then the crystals began to sing. Julia had discovered that the natural formations could be tuned to specific frequencies that played havoc with Nexarian cybersystems. As the crystals resonated, the enemy warriors staggered, their integrated technology fighting against itself. "Strike teams now," Julia ordered. From hidden positions, Xylaxian warriors emerged, their weapons powered by the same crystal energy that was disrupting the enemy. The first wave of Nexarians fell in minutes, caught completely off guard by tactics they had never encountered from their ancient foe. But the Nexarians were not known for their inability to adapt. The second wave came with shielding against the crystal resonance, their organic components taking over for their disrupted cybernetics. They moved like a swarm, threatening to overwhelm the Xylaxian positions through sheer numbers. "They're adapting faster than expected," Naira observed, her multifaceted eyes tracking the battle displays. "Just as they did before." Julia felt another memory surface, not of defeat but of innovation. "That's what they expect us to say, activate secondary protocols." The crystal formations that had been resonating suddenly went dark. The Nexarians, their systems adjusted to counter the frequency attack, surged forward directly into Julia's trap. The crystals reactivated on a completely different frequency, this time amplifying the Xylaxian energy weapons to unprecedented levels. "All teams, convergence fire," Julia commanded. Beams of purple energy lanced from multiple positions, intersecting at critical points. Where they met, they created explosions of crystalline force that shattered Nexarian armor like glass. But the enemy's numbers seemed endless. For every warrior that fell, two more took its place. The Nexarian flagship, a massive organic construct that blotted out the sun, moved into position above the city. "They're preparing for orbital bombardment," Kex warned, his sensors tracking the building energy signatures. Julia felt sweat on her brow despite her armor's cooling systems. The genetic memories were stronger now, showing her images of similar battles fought millennia ago. But she wasn't just relying on ancient knowledge. She was combining it with her own tactical training, creating something new. "Naira, do you trust me?" she asked suddenly. The Xylaxian commander looked at her with those ancient, knowing eyes. "The prophecy said you would come, that you would remember. Yes, I trust you." Julia accessed the city's crystal matrix through her armor's interface. "What I'm about to do, it's never been done before, not even in the old days." She began redirecting power from the city's defensive systems into the central spire. The crystal structure began to pulse with dangerous levels of energy, its light growing blinding. "The crystal spire can't handle that much power," Kex protested. "It'll shatter." "No," Julia said, ancestral knowledge flowing through her mind. "It won't shatter, it'll ascend." The energy reached critical levels just as the Nexarian flagship prepared to fire. Julia activated the final sequence, and the impossible happened. The crystal spire, charged with more power than it had ever contained, projected its energy upward in a column of pure force. The beam struck the Nexarian flagship at its most vulnerable point, where organic met mechanical. The effect was catastrophic. The flagship's biomechanical systems turned against each other, organic components rejecting mechanical ones in a cascade of failure. The massive ship began to break apart, its pieces raining down into the upper atmosphere where they burned away to nothing. The remaining Nexarian forces, seeing their command ship destroyed by weapons and tactics they had never encountered, began a fighting retreat. They had come expecting to find the same enemies they had fought 5,000 years ago. Instead, they had found something new, the combined strength of two civilizations, reborn and evolved. As the enemy ships fled into quantum space, Julia leaned against a crystal wall, exhausted but victorious. She looked at Naira and managed a tired smile. "Think that got their attention." Naira's expression was solemn, but her eyes shimmered with something like hope. "They'll be back, with greater numbers, new adaptations." "Good," Julia said, straightening up. "Because we're just getting started. The genetic memories, they're not just about the past. They're about evolution, about becoming something greater than either of our species was before." She looked out over the battlefield, where Xylaxian warriors were already beginning to regroup and rebuild. "The real war is just beginning, and this time we'll be ready." The crystal city pulsed with renewed energy, its light reaching up to touch the stars, not just a beacon of defiance, but a promise of what was to come. In the days following the battle, Julia stood in the deepest chamber of the halls of memory, surrounded by ancient technology that hummed with renewed purpose. The genetic memories were stronger now, flowing through her mind like a river of knowledge unleashed. But they weren't just memories anymore. They were changing, evolving, showing her possibilities that even the ancients hadn't imagined. "The quantum signatures are growing stronger," Naira reported, studying the crystalline displays. "The Nexarian fleet is regrouping. Our long-range sensors detect at least 3 times the number of ships from the first attack." Julia nodded, her hand trailing along a wall of living crystal. "They'll throw everything at us this time. No holding back, no testing our defenses. They know what we're capable of now." "Can we survive such an assault?" Kex asked. The warrior had proven himself in battle, but even he couldn't hide the concern in his voice. Instead of answering immediately, Julia pressed her palm flat against the crystal wall. The entire chamber responded, illuminating ancient markings that no one had been able to decipher for millennia. But now, with the genetic memories fully awakened, Julia saw them for what they really were. "These aren't just historical records," she said, her voice filled with wonder. "They're instructions, a blueprint left by our ancestors for exactly this moment." The chamber's crystals pulsed with energy as Julia accessed deeper layers of code and knowledge. Holographic displays sprang to life, showing designs and schematics that made Naira's multifaceted eyes widen in recognition. "The Unity Protocol," Naira whispered, "but it was never completed. The ancient archives say it was too dangerous, too unpredictable." "Because they were trying to force it," Julia said, understanding flowing through her. "The genetic memories, the prophecy of my arrival, it wasn't just about remembering the past. It was about creating something new." She stepped into the center of the chamber, and the crystals responded to her presence, creating a complex three-dimensional display of both human and Zalaxian DNA strands intertwining. 5,000 years ago, our ancestors didn't just fight together, they were working toward true symbiosis. The ability for humans and Zalaxians to share not just knowledge, but power. They seeded this potential in both our species, knowing it would take generations to mature. The display shifted, showing how the crystal technology that powered Zalaxian civilization could interface directly with human consciousness. Not through force or artificial means, but through natural evolution guided by ancient wisdom. "The Nexarians are coming with overwhelming force," Julia continued. "But they're fighting the last war. They expect us to use the same tactics, the same technology. They don't understand what we've become." She turned to address the gathered Zalaxian warriors. "Each of you carries within you the same potential that your ancestors saw in mine, the ability to transcend the boundaries between our species. The crystal technology doesn't just respond to us, we can become one with it." To demonstrate, Julia reached out with her mind, connecting with the city's crystal matrix in a way that even the ancients hadn't achieved. The entire chamber transformed, crystal formations growing and reshaping themselves according to her will. This is what the prophecy meant, Naira realized. Not just the return of human warriors, but the completion of what our ancestors began. Over the next hours, Julia worked with the Zalaxian warriors, teaching them to access abilities that had lain dormant in their species for millennia. The crystal technology that had been the foundation of their civilization was no longer just a tool. It was becoming an extension of their combined consciousness. When the Nexarian fleet arrived, darkening the sky with their biomechanical armada, they found something they had never encountered in all their centuries of conquest. The crystal city had transformed, its spires and structures moving and adapting like a living organism. The combined power of human tactical genius and Zalaxian crystal technology had created a defense that was both impenetrable and ever-changing. The battle that followed would be spoken of for generations to come. The Nexarians threw everything they had against the city, waves of ships, hordes of ground forces, weapons that could shatter planets. But they couldn't adapt to what the humans and Zalaxians had become. Crystal spires responded instantly to tactical thoughts, reforming to create perfect defensive positions. Energy weapons fired with impossible precision, guided by the combined consciousness of both species. Every Nexarian adaptation was met with an immediate counter-strategy, as if the entire city was a single living weapon. In the end, the mighty Nexarian fleet didn't just retreat, it fled in terror from something they couldn't comprehend. The alliance they had feared 5,000 years ago had evolved into something far more powerful than mere military might. Standing amid the victory celebrations, Julia looked out over the crystal city that now pulsed in perfect harmony with its inhabitants. "This is just the beginning," she said to Naira. "The genetic memories show me other human colonies out there, other Zalaxian worlds, all carrying the same dormant potential." Naira nodded, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the crystal light. "Then we have much work to do, awakening our peoples to their true destiny." Julia smiled, feeling the combined strength of two civilizations flowing through her. The Nexarians thought they were fighting the last war. Instead, they helped us start the next stage of evolution. Above them, the crystal spires reached toward the stars, no longer just monuments or weapons, but bridges to a future where the boundaries between species faded away, replaced by something greater than their ancestors had ever dreamed possible.